It's too risky. It can't be done. It won't work.
Surface and hydraulics.
It's not realistic. You'll fail. You can't. It's not possible. It's what they tell us. It's what we tell ourselves. Good thing we don't listen.
Ready?
We're ready.
But we needed the opportunity to let it grow.
And we found that opportunity right here.
It's about making real impact. I'm going to stay here and work here.
This is the city that we see a future with. And we're ready right now.
Thank you.
It is possible in the Blue Sky City.
Get us in the mood. Get us in the mood. Let's go. Yep. Good afternoon, everyone. How the hell are we doing today? Wow. Wow, really? Okay, let's get this thing going. I'm Brad Parry. I will be your MC this afternoon. I might have a couple of words to say as well, but welcome to the 2026 Economic Outlook powered by ATB Financial. It is really inspiring to see this room full of community, business, government, not-for-profit leaders, entrepreneurs, investors, educators, and more. The people who are here help shaping what's possible under Calgary's blue skies. Thanks for being here. And before I kick things off, I want to take this opportunity to acknowledge that there have been Indigenous economies and economic development in the Treaty 7 region since time immemorial. The Blue Sky City inspires, connects, and calls for a deeper understanding of our past and our future. As we come together to share a new collective story of Calgary, we pay respect to the people of the Treaty 7 region in southern Alberta, who are original creators in our community. We acknowledge that we gather in the home of the Blackfoot Confederacy, comprising of the Siksika, Kainai, Piikani nations, the Ithaka Nakota, comprising of the Bearspaw, Chiniki, and Goodstoney nations, and the Tsuut'ina Nation. Calgary is also the homeland to the historic Northwest Métis and the original Otipemisiwak Métis government, including Nose Hill Métis District 5 and Elbow Métis District 6. We acknowledge all Indigenous people who have made Calgary their home, and it is with this recognition that we do our work to build a prosperous city for all Calgarians. So, to kick things off for us today, please welcome a good friend of ours, Dr. Linda Manyguns, who will lead us in an opening blessing. Dr. Manyguns.
Greetings. I was thinking about what to say today, and I believe you are the change makers today. You have the ability to make decisions. You have the ability to make a difference. And what I thought about as an Indigenous person was how we think about change. And so I'll present a prayer, and in it, what I'll hope is that your thoughts and decision-making that you carry on a day-to-day basis might take into consideration the way we think about change and what we think about for decisions. So we don't think about decisions for a week or for the moment, We don't think about decisions for a year or 10 years. We ask that you take into consideration the way that we make decisions, and that is to think about how the decisions you make today will impact the children in 7 generations. The long view of thinking. So I will keep these thoughts in mind, and I ask you to do the same thing. Okay. Netana kuna tuyik mishish kumaki. Ayek spamukinan. Ayek sokapi. Ikunapi okamotapi. Oki ponokapi kimpan. Nanamska kokin. Yoki mix. I call on these items that I've been transferred to help you in your thinking. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Manyguns, and congratulations again on your publishing of your book. Our city's story is rooted in the convergence across cultures and generations. A legacy that continues through the partners who have invested in our shared prosperity. So I'd like to give a huge shout out and a sincere thank you to today's presenting sponsor and longtime partner, ATB Financial, who are a cornerstone of Calgary's and Alberta's business community. We're also very grateful, and as you've heard before, we're a very grateful bunch, to our VIP networking sponsor, WSP, our AV partner, Encore, and some of our gold sponsors, including CAT Pension Plans, Rogers, the Calgary Herald, and EY. I also want to thank our silver sponsors that include Alberta Blue Cross, CPHR Alberta, Mount Royal University, PCL, Stone Olofsson, and the Calgary Herald. I mean, you know how much we, and me personally, value your support and partnerships that help make events like this possible. But it also fuels the work that we do all year long to advance Calgary's economy. So thank you. We really, really do appreciate that. Now, speaking of partners, Calgary is a place where people come together to get hard things done. You know what I usually say, but I'm going to say hard things done this time. Faster and better than we could do it if we did it on our own. So our Team Calgary sponsorship program is designed to create a team approach to economic development for our community. We now have over 80 Team Calgary partners that are lending their insights and supporting our community to build economic prosperity in the Blue Sky City. We thank you for your support. Again, we couldn't do what we do without you. And if you're not a Team Calgary partner yet, just give me a call. We'd love to have you. All right, let's get things going today. We've got a huge lineup of strong voices that are going to help make sense of what's actually happening around the economy and where our economy is heading this year. First up, we're going to have Chris Trzansky, the group head of ATB Business and Wealth, followed by Navin Arora, who is the board chair of Calgary Economic Development. Mayor Jeromy Farkas will also be up here to give us his thoughts and comments. Mark Parsons, the chief economist from ATB Financial, will be here. And Andrew Coyne, a nationally syndicated political journalist, will also be here today. And just in case you can't get enough of me, I just might have a couple of words to say as well. So hang in there. Anyways, everyone's going to bring a different lens, provincial, local, national, global, to help us understand what's going to shape Calgary's economy in the year to come. I'm then going to sit down with Andrew and Mark, have a bit of one-on-ones, but more importantly, it's your chance to get your questions in. So just scan the QR code that you're going to see, get your questions in, and we're going to try to get to as many of them as we possibly can. Now, before we dive right into the program, I just want to say how absolutely blessed I am to get to work day in and day out with the incredible teams at Calgary Economic Development and the Opportunity Calgary Investment Fund. Their dedication, passion, and drive to help make our city the envy of the country is truly, truly awe-inspiring. And they motivate me every single day. So everybody, thank you for everything that you're doing for us. Really, really appreciate it. Okay, now to kick things off with our first insights, I'm going to ask Chris Strachansky, Group Head ATB Business and Wealth from ATB Financial, to join me on stage. Chris?
Thank you so much, Brad, and thanks for all the tremendous work that your team does. Good afternoon, everyone. As Brad said, my name's Chris Strachansky. I'm the Group Head of Business and Wealth at ATB Financial. I want to thank everyone for joining us for the 2026 Calgary Economic Outlook. This is our 10th year as being the presenting sponsor, and this event very quickly became one of our favorite events. It's not because of the beautiful venue that we're in. It's not because of the inspiring energy. It's because we get a chance to sit down and talk with you, the business leaders of Alberta who are changing Alberta, who are driving the economy, not just here in Calgary, not just across Alberta, but all across Canada. It's why we love to work across Alberta. It's why we're proud to be the only full-service financial institution that's actually based in Western Canada. The economic landscape today is increasingly complex. As business owners, you're navigating interest rates, inflation, supply chain, an ever-evolving workforce, and this on-again, off-again thing called tariffs. Navigating that complexity is only getting harder and harder each day because you're no longer just navigating one simple thing. There's multiple things coming at you as a business leader each and every day. These multiple things are creating an environment today that's more complex, more volatile, more uncertain, and more ambiguous than ever before. The good news is getting a chance to talk with business owners before the program started, getting a chance to connect with a number of business owners over the last year, I take great confidence in that what defines our success isn't numbers on a spreadsheet. It's not headlines from the newspaper. It's not the activities of others. It's the resilience of the business community, the resilience that shows up time and time again in times of complexity. As Albertans, we don't shy away from challenges or obstacles. We face them head on. We faced them in the past, whether that's market volatility, commodity prices, whether that's just the rapid pace of change that we need to deal with. We have this unique ability to adapt, to drive forward, and to succeed. In some ways, you could say that that is our greatest natural resource. I see entrepreneurs ready to seize the moment. I see communities coming together to support one another. I see leaders growing our economy and building our province. We're eager today to hear the forecasts from the experts to help us cut through some of that noise and provide clarity so that we can build our strategic plans going forward, so we can tell the difference between what's noise and what's trends. We can listen to the forecasts that will allow our entrepreneurial spirit to cut through and drive the success that's driven this province for so many years. I hope you enjoy this afternoon's presentations, and I want to thank you for everything you do to make Calgary, Alberta, and Canada the place to be. Thank you.
Amazing. Thank you, Chris. And again, thank you to ATB Financial for your leadership and your unwavering commitment to Alberta businesses. Your work strengthens the foundation we're building on. As we look ahead, strong governance and a clear vision are what keeps us focused on our strategy and our goals. We're incredibly fortunate at Calgary Economic Development and the Opportunity Calgary Investment Fund to have boards that bring a wealth of experience, insight, and guidance to all the work that we do. It's made up of a volunteer community and business leaders who push us to think bigger all the time while staying grounded in what matters for Calgarians. I personally can't thank them enough for all that they do in our community. With that, please welcome our board chair of Calgary Economic Development, Mr. Navin Arora.
Thank you, Brad, and thanks to everyone joining us here today for our 2026 Economic Outlook, powered by our partners at ATB Financial. It's absolutely incredible to see so many of Calgary's business and community leaders gathered here to look ahead, not just at what's next for our economy, but how we shape it together. On behalf of my fellow board chair, Dan Balaban from the Opportunity Calgary Investment Fund, and our dedicated board members, welcome. Our two boards, CED and OSIF, bring together exceptional leaders who share the same goal, to see Calgary thrive. Leaders who know this city from the inside and who understand the work, the trade-offs, and the pace required to move Calgary forward. Their insight, experience, and collaboration help guide our organization and drive our city forward. This year, we welcomed some new board members around each of our leadership tables, including Harish Consul and Jennifer Pond to the CED board, Jerry Greenall and Mayor Jeromy Farkas to the OSIF board, and Councillor John Pantazopoulos, who joined both boards. Each leader brings fresh ideas and energy to our shared mission of driving investment, innovation, and growth in the Blue Sky City. To all of our board members, your commitment matters, and we're deeply grateful for your leadership and dedication to Calgary's long-term success. And Mayor Farkas, it's great to have you here today. Your early focus on collaboration and getting things done for Calgarians and really sets the tone for what's ahead, and we look forward to rolling up our sleeves together. You're bringing those fresh ideas and clear sense of direction, and I'm excited about the opportunity to build on Calgary's momentum with you and turn that shared vision into real progress. And as you settle into this new chapter, please know you've got partners in this room, people who believe in Calgary's potential as strongly as you do, who are ready to support you in delivering on that vision. Our city is changing faster than it has in a generation. As we look ahead to 2026 and beyond, there's a renewed sense of possibility in Calgary, and you can feel that momentum. It's in the pace of investment and diversification, and in the businesses and talent choosing Calgary as home. At Calgary Economic Development, our focus is simple: keep that momentum going. Guided by our economic action plan, Uplook, we're laying the foundation for Calgary's future, one defined by innovation, livability, and inclusive growth. Across Canada, we're seeing bold steps in innovation, from the launch of the country's first sovereign AI factory to breakthroughs in clean energy, agri-tech, life sciences, aerospace, and digital health. And here in Calgary, businesses and entrepreneurs aren't just participating in that shift, they're leading it. They're turning those bold ideas into impact, shaping solutions that matter, not just for Alberta, but for the world. That kind of success doesn't happen by accident. It happens because of people like you. People who choose collaboration over competition and who see barriers as invitations to build something better so that people, industries, and their ideas can take flight. Many of you here and many of our sponsor organizations are members of Team Calgary, a network of more than 80 organizations working together to build Calgary's future and tell our story worldwide. And as Brad said, we're looking for the next 80. And we're showing what's possible when a city rallies together as one team around opportunity, building an economy that's resilient, future-ready, and globally competitive. So as you listen to today's conversations about global and local forces shaping our economy, I encourage all of us to think about the decisions that we need to make now, Not only so we can keep this momentum going, but for the businesses, people, and the next generation who will inherit the choices we make today. Thank you for being part of this journey, for your collaboration, and for helping build a city where truly anything is possible. Thanks.
Thank you, Navin. And thanks again for all of your leadership and partnership in guiding Calgary's economic momentum. Again, a big thank you to the entire CED and OSIF boards who, again, volunteer their time in helping us drive this mandate forward. You know, Navin's perspective is a reminder that economic development is a team sport. And at the center of those efforts is the civic leadership that sets the tone for our city's ambition, direction, and identity. With that, we're incredibly pleased to welcome someone whose role is to catalyze all of this. Please join me in welcoming the 38th mayor of our amazing city, Mr. Jeromy Farkas.
Oh my gosh, it is amazing to be here with all of you this afternoon. Thanks for the amazing introduction, and thanks as well for the incredible spotlight on our sponsors and amazing board committee members and aligned organizations who are in support of our event today. So thank you as well to all of you who chose to participate and spend your afternoon with us. And this is such an important moment for us all to be together, because the decisions that we're making now as a city, and particularly the decisions that myself and my council colleagues will be making over the next week in our municipal budget debate, is going to set Calgary's course for years to come. So let me start plainly. I'm not going to go too much into the numbers. There's actual economists and skilled experts that are going to be able to speak to that in just a moment's time. But I want to start plainly. Calgary is growing quickly. The economy around us is shifting, and families and businesses are feeling real pressure. And it's in times like these that the city's job is to be steady, focused, and united. And that's the mindset that our brand new city council is bringing into this budget debate. Discipline, clarity, and teamwork. Through the course of the campaign and in the days afterwards, Calgarians have been asking us for three things. First, to be responsible. Second, to work together as a team. And third, to include the public in the major decisions that impact them the most. And we have to respect the pressure that people are under right now. Higher costs at the grocery store, rising interest rates, and global uncertainty that none of us can control nor predict. So as we approach this year's budget, our message is simple: to keep life affordable, to protect essential services and public safety, and to plan for long-term stability. That's why I and others will be championing meaningful steps to reduce the proposed nearly 6% tax increase on homeowners by at least half. Not by pretending the challenges have disappeared, not by pushing the problems onto future councils, but by making real choices, by setting real priorities, and by acting like a city and a council that knows where we are going. A growing city does not mean a growing burden on our residents. A responsible city adapts, and that's exactly what our brand new team of city councillors are doing. Another major piece shaping this budget and our economic trajectory is housing. Calgarians want homes that they can afford, they want clear rules, they want predictability, and they want a voice in how their communities will continue to grow. That's why City Council will consider a motion authored by Councillor Andre Chabot and others to consider beginning the process to repeal blanket rezoning. And this repeal would be a reset that would restore trust, rebuild a planning system that works with communities, not around them or against them. And that's our direction going forward, one that's focused on targeted infrastructure-aligned growth, real partnerships with neighborhoods, faster approvals where growth makes sense, and a balanced approach that protects both affordability and community stability. Housing remains a top priority for our council, and it will be delivered with more clarity, more respect, and more certainty. That's the path that we're going to be taking together. Now let me be very clear, no budget, no housing plan, no economic strategy matters if Calgarians don't feel safe. Businesses feel it, families feel it, seniors feel it, and the numbers show it. Last week, I had the opportunity to visit Kalamata Grocery, a long-standing Beltline corner store hit repeatedly by break-ins and social disorder. And in speaking with them and the owners and the family behind the store, they're exhausted. Their customers are anxious, and unfortunately, their story is not unique. And I mention this because public safety is not an add-on. It's the very foundation of a healthy economy. Because when people feel secure, they invest, they stay in our city, and they grow. And that's why our council will be taking urgent steps on crime, and most importantly, its root causes. More visible enforcement, closer coordination with our nonprofit and social sector, actions toward reopening a downtown police station, targeted safety improvements on transit and in public spaces, and stronger action on the deeper mental health, addiction, and housing challenges driving that crime. This is not the work of any one person, one program, or one department. This is the work of an entire city, all of you, all of us, moving as one to restore confidence. And that work begins now. But let me also say that despite the numbers that we're going to be hearing, Calgary is not a city that's defined by its challenges. Calgary is a city defined by its energy. The city is alive, truly alive, in few places that other places in North America can hardly match. From festivals that fill our streets, to concerts that pack our venues, to a brand new event center and home for our Calgary Flames, to theater, to galleries, to comedy, film, dance, and live music across every single corner of this great city, Calgary is buzzing with creativity. On any weekend, you can see emerging artists at C-Space, catch a show at Loose Moose, visit the National Access Arts Center, take in life on 17th, or join families in parks celebrating cultural festivals from around the world. And it's our events, our culture, our arts community. These are not extras. They are part of our identity. They attract talent. They build community. They fuel our economy. And they remind us that Calgary is not just a great place to work, it's a great place to live and to make a life. A great city must feel alive, and Calgary does. And to keep that spirit strong, we have to work together. There's a phrase that you're going to hear from a lot of the speakers, including me, Team Calgary. And I want to take an opportunity to invite my city council, brand new city council colleagues to please rise and be acknowledged as Team Calgary. I believe Ward 1, Councillor Kim Tyers is with us, Councillor for Ward 2, Jennifer Winas, Councillor for Ward 3, Andrew Ewell, Councillor for Ward 4, DJ Kelly, Councillor for Ward 5, Raj Dhaliwal, Councillor for Ward 6, John Pantazopoulos, Councillor for Ward 7, Mike Atkinson, Councillor for Ward 8, Nathaniel Schmidt, Councillor for Ward 9, Andre Chabot, Councillor for Ward 9 is Harrison Clark. And I thought I had the numbers right. The numbers changed. Councillor for Ward 9 is Harrison Clark. Councillor for Ward 10 is Andre Chabot. Councillor for Ward 11 is Rob Ward. Councillor for Ward 12 is Mike Jamieson. Councillor for Ward 13 is Deputy Mayor Dan McLean. And Councillor for Ward 14 is Landon Johnston. To all my council colleagues, please rise and be recognized. And this recognition is important because we are excited to work together as a team. Many of us brand new to the roles, many of us with the institutional knowledge, like Councillor Chabot. I see him looking at me and nodding. I've gotten my procedural motions in order after yesterday's public hearing, and with its continued coaching and learning, I think after 4 years, I'll be able to end the meetings before dinner time. So the reason I mention this is because at a time when division is easy, when gridlock is tempting, Calgary needs something different, a city that pulls together. We can't afford silos, we can't afford politics for politics' sake, and we can never, ever afford to teach each other, or rather, we can never afford to treat each other as opponents inside the same city. And lately, I've seen some incredibly encouraging signs. Council is engaging constructively. Even when we disagree, we're agreeable. Businesses are stepping up, communities are leaning in, and behind all of it are the nearly 20,000 public servants who make the city work. They clear snow before dawn, they keep the streets safe, they maintain our parks and water systems, they support families and seniors, they keep transit moving, and they're the first to respond when crisis hits. We are a city and a council that is ready for what's next. We've survived and we've thrived through disasters, downturns, and setbacks, but through it all, we're one city, one council, one team, a city that's ready for what's next. Calgary is growing fast, and our opportunity is growing with it, but so are the expectations. People want a city, and they deserve a city that's affordable, safe, reliable, transparent, and stable. A city that plans ahead. A city that welcomes newcomers and supports longtime residents. A city ready just not for next year, but for the next decade. And it's that mindset that drives me, your brand new city council, all of our actions on your behalf. So we will invest where it counts, we will tighten where we must, we will choose priorities that matter, we will rebuild trust, and we will position Calgary for long-term strength. Because somewhere out there, our 2 millionth Calgarian, is on their way. They're choosing Calgary because they believe that this is a city where things work, where people care, and where leadership shows up. They are counting on us. They are counting on us to listen, counting on our teamwork, counting on us to build a city that lives up to its promise. Calgary, a city that works hard, that looks out for one another, that never backs down from a challenge. This is Calgary's moment. This is our moment, all of you, all of us, and together we're going to make the most of it. Thank you for this opportunity to serve.
Thank you, Mayor Farkas. Your sense of optimism, passion, and collaboration for our city is clear. And we look forward to working with you and all of Council on continuing to build a city of prosperity for all Calgarians. So I'm going to take my MC hat off for 1 second. I warned you about this, and put my other hat on for a second. So, our city has always been a place of opportunity and resilience. A place where visionaries, dreamers, and doers are solving some of the world's biggest challenges. And this doesn't happen without innovation. I'm going to talk about that a little bit later. But first, I want to reflect a little bit on this past year and then look a little bit in the future. It's clear that our path forward is going to be marked by both challenges and promise. We've witnessed continued geopolitical strife, with new ones seemingly popping up every other week. Global tariffs continue to be a guessing game. One day up, one day down, one day on, one day off. The stress this causes our businesses is incredible. So it's not surprising to see that uncertainty is way up and confidence is down. We see a rise in policy uncertainty, and the Trade Policy Uncertainty Index clearly reflects this volatility. Meanwhile, consumer confidence continues to be tested. Inflation, recession, shifting market dynamics, and so much more. Our unemployment rate is sitting at 7.9%, which is higher than the national average right now of 6.9%. We also know that the youth unemployment rate here in Calgary is the second highest in the country. So even with all of these headwinds that we have, our city's blue sky spirit still remains undaunted, as you just heard from the mayor. We continue to attract people and businesses who see this as a place to build a career and a life. They're drawn here by our competitive business environment and our reputation for opportunity and livability. As you heard the mayor just say, in the next 4 years, we are going to welcome the 2 millionth Calgarian. There's also more positive signs out there. I mean, Calgary continues to outperform most of the major cities with the highest labor market participation and employment rates in Canada. And importantly, we've led the country in job growth over the last year. And in fact, for the second year in a row, Calgary is now the fastest growing tech talent market in all of North America. We see venture capital continue to flow into our community. We're now ranked third in the country, and we see 80% of all venture capital deals come into Calgary. As we look ahead to 2026, we see that the forecast for our economy is that it's going to grow by about 2.4% next year. The population is going to grow by about 2.2%. Inflation, we see coming in flat about 2.1%. And the signals that we also see is that unemployment should start to ease back down towards that 7% range. So yes, we're optimistic. We'll see some relief on affordability. Our economy should continue to grow, and job creation should keep pace. But I want to be clear, though. Going into next year, the uncertainty is going to persist. We're going into face a continued complex economic landscape. There's going to be continued global trade tensions. Geopolitical volatility is not going away. And we're also going to have evolving domestic policies. We also know that our biggest and longest standing trade partnership is under stress. Flip side, Canada has 15 free trade agreements with access to 51 countries and more than 1.5 billion customers. And that's why our work on expanding into new markets and diversifying our trade relationships for our local companies is more important than ever. We're going to continue to run our Trade Accelerator program, which helps companies get export ready. In fact, this year alone, we've already seen 29 trade deals happen. And as a matter of fact, I was just in Southeast Asia and Japan, I'll talk about it in a moment, where we signed 3 more deals to get our local products into that country. We've also supported over 104 companies this year already. And you're going to see us do even more. We're going to work with more companies to help support them of all sizes to find and expand into new markets. But here at CED, we don't just think about next year. We have to think about the next 5, 10, 15, 20, 25 years. And when we look out that far, we cannot have a conversation unless innovation is at the core of it. I read a piece a little while ago. It was about trade, economics, and innovation. And there was one segment that just stuck with me, and it's been with me this whole time. And it said, the U.S. innovates. China replicates. Europe and Canada, we regulate. Now, you don't believe me? Fair, it's fair. I mean, I wasn't quite sure myself, and neither was Lee, who's on our team. So we did a little bit of digging. And earlier this year, StatsCan conducted research that found the federal regulatory burden on Canadians rose 37% from 2006 to 2021. Again, 37%. And here's the kicker. At the federal level alone, and again, just at the Fed level, there was an increase of, are you ready? 86,700 regulations. Now look, regs are important. Get that. But almost 87,000 regulations over a 15-year period? I mean, the costs are staggering of this. The estimated costs are crazy. If you think about that, we're talking about a 1.7% reduction in national GDP, a 1.3% reduction in employment growth. and an unbelievable 9% hit to business investments. I mean, overregulation is impeding our ability to innovate, and it's stifling our economy. Instead of a culture of regulation, we need to create an environment where our dreamers, our doers, our builders, and our blue sky thinkers can succeed. If we want to build a more resilient, diversified economy, our focus needs to be on innovation. I mean, there's headlines everywhere these days, right? They're talking about this. I mean, just this year alone, the Nobel Prize for Economics was awarded to 3 researchers. One, who was a Canadian economist, Peter Howitt, for their groundbreaking work on innovation-driven economic growth. We hear all the time about the war on talent. And it's true. Look, there is a war on talent, and we're always going to need great talent to be successful. But what we're really in, we're in a race to innovate. A global race to innovate. And more specifically, the race is on to create the environment where innovation and innovators can flourish. I'll give you an example. Literally, 48 hours ago, I got off a plane. I was in Southeast Asia and Japan. And I can tell you firsthand, this race is on. This race is real. And it's only going to get more intense. In Japan, they talk about the lost 30 years. Not the last 30 years, the lost 30 years. And what they're referring to is their lack of innovation over that period has set them so far behind. I mean, they are looking at this and going, we have to try to solve this problem. So what do you think they're going to do about it? They're investing. They're investing like crazy into their ecosystems. And they're setting ambitious targets. I mean, they've set something like a 10x increase in unicorns over a 10-year period. And they have a whole bunch more. But the table stakes are all about collaboration. I was also fortunate enough to spend some time in the city of Nagoya, which is about 2.3 million people. And it's also one of the world's biggest manufacturing hubs. They've built an innovation center that can host 1,000 companies. They've only been open for less than a year, and they're already at 60% capacity. But you know what's interesting? It's not just for Japanese companies. It's not just for Japanese entrepreneurs. They're welcoming people, companies, entrepreneurs, and innovators from around the world to help solve some of those challenges. What they've also done is they've figured out how to unlock corporate venture. In their short time in existence, they already have over 400 corporate partners in that program alone. We need to figure it out. I mean, we have to figure out how to do that as well. We need to unlock corporate capital in our city. I also spent some time in Singapore. I can tell you, they have one of the most connected innovation ecosystems in the world. Governments, post-secondaries, industries, entrepreneurs are all working in tandem in attracting the best and the brightest innovators from around the world. These companies are creating the environments that are breeding innovation. Look, innovation can't just be a buzzword. It's got to be a blueprint for how we win this next decade. But you know what? It's not going to happen by accident. And that's why we have Calgary's innovation strategy. Its goal is for Calgary to become the innovation capital of this country. It's designed to establish sector-specific innovation nodes where innovators can develop and test new ideas. Look to create networks that are designed to make more impact, more companies, and more intellectual property. One that's designed to unlock capital in all its forms and let the market decide who the winners are. It's designed to attract the best and the brightest, and especially to create an environment where the dreamers, doers, and visionaries can get back to building. If we do this right, we could add up to 187,000 jobs to our community and $28 billion to Calgary's economy over the next decade. Our economy is just way too important to leave to chance. And whether we like it or not, we are in a race to innovate. We can't afford to waste a single year, let alone 30. And the stakes couldn't be higher. If we don't get this right, we lose jobs, we lose investments, we lose people, and most importantly, we lose the future that I know we all believe we can have right here. But the thing is, nobody can do it alone. We need to be intentional, and we have to be committed, because I know it's possible if we do this together. Thank you. Back on. There we go. I'm your MC again. So we talked about momentum, but understanding what's ahead requires an honest look at the economic forces shaping Alberta as a whole. These are the trends that influence every business and every person in this room today, from hiring decisions to capital plans to long-term strategy. So now, to help bring some clarity on what's ahead for Alberta in 2026, please welcome a very good friend of ours and a great partner, ATB Financial's Chief Economist, Mark Parsons. Mark.
Expand your thinking when it comes to finding the right opportunities for your real estate business growth strategy. Look around. There's so much room to grow when you've got ATB to support you. Because with the right team, anything is possible.
Hello. They wouldn't let me on the stage. I was just like trying to get up there, and they wait for the video. And anyway, good to see you all. Look, I want to start my presentation off with a story. About 15 years ago, I was selling my house, and everything was great. I sold it, but it came with a condition. That condition was I had to make some changes to the electrical in my basement, bring it up to code or something like that. Because it was up to code, but codes had changed, and so the buyer just wanted everything to be done properly. So here's the problem. I'm an economist. I'm not an electrician. That might surprise you. I don't really know what I'm doing with this stuff. So what did I do? Well, I waited till the last minute, and I tried doing it myself. So there I was in the basement, the night before the inspection, rewiring, changing receptacles, lights, all the stuff I have no business doing. 2 a.m, I thought, okay, I think I've got it. This is good. So if you've ever done electrical work, the defining moment is turning the breaker on to make sure it all works. So I went downstairs, and I went to turn the breaker. Anyway, we should talk about Donald Trump. It's kind of interesting what he did, right? April 2nd, so-called Liberation Day, he took the trade war global. Tariffs on everybody. Tariffs. And I'm going to discount it by 50%, give you a deal. And then over the summer, we're all on vacation, and he's making deals. UK, European Union, Japan. But then Minister LeBlanc, do you see him on this picture? He's walking away. He's representing Canada in the trade negotiations. No deal. No deal for Canada. But we're told we shouldn't be concerned because it could be worse. Could be worse. You see, the global tariff rate, this is from the budget, the federal budget, 17% effective tariff rate globally. Canada's 5.4%. So we get some exemptions through the Canada-US-Mexico agreement, 85% tariff-free, sector-specific tariffs, all that kind of stuff. And so Carney's saying, look, we don't have a deal, but it could be a lot worse. And then, ATB's calculations right there. What we're showing here, what's really important, the second picture, is that it's not uniform across the country. Quebec, Ontario, big steel, aluminum producers, autos, sector-specific tariffs, they're getting hit a bit harder. And on the other side, you have Alberta, which we estimate the effective tariff rate on Alberta because of what we send, primarily energy, is less than 2%. So this picture helps you understand why we're feeling it a little bit less than the rest of the country. But we shouldn't be complacent because this is not going away, folks, this uncertainty. This is something we're going to have to live through next year for sure. Because just as we're talking about a good deal, tariff threats, you didn't like the Reagan ad, right? So more tariffs or threats of tariffs, we don't know. But this is the uncertainty that businesses are dealing with today. How do you make long-term business decisions? So what are we doing about this? Did you know that we'd be talking about elbows so much in 2025? Like elbows up, elbows down, what are your elbows doing? I had no idea. I did not see that. Was not in my forecast. So there's an elbows up slide I should have showed if I had more time, which is we're not going to the States as much. We're not traveling. We're like, you know what? Americans, we're going to protest. We're not going to go to the States. And so I could survey you right now and ask you if you've been going to the States. But I've tried this before. No one puts up their hand. And then I go talk at the back, and everyone's talking about their trip to Phoenix. So don't worry, I'm not going to ask you to put up your hand. Here's an elbows down chart. You want an elbows down chart? 76% of our exports went to the US in 2024. So far this year we're done with the States. We're exporting our stuff to other more reliable customers. We're going to ship our product abroad. So far this year, 74%. So anyone who's saying, well, we're done with the Americans, does not understand the data. Turns out supply chains are hard to reverse. We have highways, we have rail, pipelines sending our product to the US. And you know what? They're the largest economy, so we should value that trading relationship. It's important. We need a long-term trade deal. That doesn't mean we shouldn't do other stuff. But this is going to be super important in 2026 as the Canada-US-Mexico agreement gets renewed or renegotiated. So how are businesses feeling about all this? I'm going to be talking about feelings a little bit in this presentation. It makes me a little bit uncomfortable. So here's something really bizarre. When Trump was threatening tariffs to start the new year, remember we went after Canada and Mexico first? Businesses, when they were surveyed, said they felt worse than during COVID. COVID? We couldn't even leave our house during COVID. We weren't doing anything. No one was spending money. Businesses were suffering. And yet small businesses said they felt worse with the tariff threats. The only way I can explain this is by talking about my vacation. The way I vacation. What am I talking about? Okay, bear with me here. When I go on vacation, I'm the guy that gets super excited about planning it. Like, I'm just like online, I'm like checking things out. I'm so pumped about my vacation. My wife is the opposite. She won't even talk about it. She's like, well, Mark, we could get sick, there could be an airline strike. Who knows what Trump's gonna do with travel restrictions? I'm not even gonna talk about it. But guess what? When we arrive at the destination, the plane lands, she's like, this is amazing. This is so good. I say, Erin, nothing's happened. The plane just landed. And she'll say, well, yeah, but we survived the flight. We're all here. And then I'm kind of grumpy the whole vacation because I'm like, it's not as good as the brochure. And she's like, this is amazing. Like, we're healthy. And this is what's happened to businesses. The bar was so low with Trump and his tariff threats that people are expecting the worst. And then a few months go by and it's like, hey, I don't like this. This isn't great. It's definitely been better. But I'm gonna have to sort this out. And that's exactly the way people are feeling right now. It's kind of like in an uncertain, not great world, but like, you know, with the economy contracted, the Canadian economy contracted in Q2, you know, probably eco some positive growth in Q3. So we're probably gonna avoid a technical recession. Much better than feared. Okay, let's talk about Alberta. Alberta is more jobs, but even more people. That's the labor market. That's all you need to know. So we're creating jobs faster than the rest of the country. Great news. The problem is we're adding more people at an even faster rate. So what happens when you add a lot of people to an economy in a very short period of time that outpaces job creation? Brad showed it. The unemployment rate goes up. So we're in this really odd position where we're leading the country in growth, but we have recession-like levels of unemployment. And it's not because there's mass layoffs, it's just because we can't keep pace. So many people are coming to Alberta. Over 200,000 in 2024. Those numbers are coming down. In Calgary, CMA alone, over 100,000. How does an economy absorb that many people in such a short period of time? It's really hard. So, should we not be worried about labor shortages, skilled labor? Yeah, we should. Here's a weird thing. Despite the fact that we have all these people coming to Alberta and we have like pretty deep labor pools, we still have skilled shortages. When I present at construction conferences, the people say to me in the audience, they're like, Mark, I don't know what you're talking about. And I'm like, what, like nothing? My whole presentation? You don't get any of it? No, just the part where you said we got lots of people. Because I actually can't hire anybody. I can't find anyone. I'm like, oh, because it's a skills mismatch thing. It's weird, right? We got all these people, but not necessarily the right people for the jobs. So we're in a position now where we got to start matching people to jobs that are in high demand. And if we're going to build, baby, build, as everyone's talking about, it's trending, if you haven't noticed, who's going to build it? Literally, like the governments just say like $1 trillion of private investment, we're going to build. Woo! Who is actually going to build all this stuff? Oh, we'll figure it out later. This is a really big deal. We need people, skilled people, that can move Canada's economy forward. So the population clock in Alberta is slowing. And the reason I say clock is because one of my favorite hobbies is I go on the Alberta population clock and I watch the population grow in real time. Like, it's really fun. You should do it. I'm pretty sure I was the only one. Maybe someone's going to put up their hand. But I was in May. Did you know Alberta's population turned 5 million, 5000, and because of the real-time population clock, I froze it. I took a screenshot, and to this day, no one has told me that they did the same thing at 11:18 on a Sunday night. And I get the exact same response every time, because like we have a life. And maybe you should do other things, Mark, with your time. But anyway, the population clock is slowing. We're not expecting the same growth that we've had. So we're going from over 200,000 people being out of the province to kind of like somewhere in the range of 90, 80,000 a year. still strong by historic standards. That's because people are moving here from other provinces. But you might be asking yourself, why does it feel different? And remember I said I was going to be talking about feelings? In economists, the way we express ourselves, our feelings is through charts. This is what I do. I use charts. So if you were asking yourself, Mark, it just feels so different, this economy. I can't quite put my finger on it. I'm like, this is the chart. This is your chart to describe the way you feel. The Alberta economy has tried to figure out how to grow with about $30 billion less energy investment every year. That's hard, really hard. How do you do it? You diversify. But diversification is hard, it takes time. So this is an economy that's been absorbing this big drop in oil and gas investment for over the last decade. And it's still going to, because we don't have it really moving up. But yet production continues to rise. Why is production rising while investment's down? Because the oil and gas industry is optimizing what they have. They're getting more out of the investment. And so they're filling the Trans Mountain expansion right now. We have LNG Canada Phase 1. We've had some big breakthroughs in market access. But unless we see some major breakthroughs in market access that gives them certainty and regulatory certainty, we just don't see this moving much on investment. So let's talk about Canada. Here's a quote that you might say, well, Mark, why are you putting up a quote from a business group or like a Fraser Institute or something like that? This is from the federal budget. Construction of major infrastructure stalled, arduous, inefficient. If you read the federal budget, which I'm sure you all did, you would be shocked at how much they just lay it all out, all the problems. Not just Trump problems, but pre-existing challenges. The productivity crisis that the Bank of Canada was talking about, no one really cared. And so we're in a situation now where we have problem identification. What's the first way to solve a problem? You have to identify the problem. That's the first step. So we have problem identification in Canada right now. We're saying we need to do something about that. And why? Well, look at the other chart. That's not my chart. That's from the federal budget as well. Now, the yikes with the circle around it, that's my commentary. But I'm pretty sure when Mark Carney saw this chart too, he had a big circle around and said, yikes. Because we need to do something about this. The Canadian economy cannot grow through more consumer spending and government. It can't. It has to find ways to bring back investment. How are you going to get a Canadian economy growing with lower levels of business investment today than 10 years ago? I don't think it's possible, unless you have some ideas. We can talk afterwards. So basically, there's this as Taylor Swift said, it's me, I'm the problem, it's me. We've spent the whole year blaming Donald Trump for everything. But Taylor Swift wrote about this a long time ago. And she said, no, it's you. This guy is not coming to the rescue. His name is Tiff Macklem, Governor of the Bank of Canada. He's already done his thing. He took interest rates from 5% down to 2.25%, and I think he's going to hold. And he basically says as much. Monetary policy can't do blah, blah, blah. They can't offset the impacts of the trade war. Structural reform has to. That's central banks speak for, there's levers over here I'm not allowed to pull. I'm pulling the interest rate lever here, and I'd like to pull these. I don't have access to them. So Mark, I think Tiff Macklin's going golfing. He's done. He's basically saying, this is not my problem anymore. It's over to you. Over to you, Mark Carney, and the premiers working together. You got to fix this. And so that's exactly what is happening right now. The Mark Carney is saying we're going to double non-US exports over the next decade. That's what the line looks like if we're successful. $1 trillion of private sector investment. That's what the federal budget talks about. So how are we actually going to do this? Remember, this is very important. because we've had this crisis for a long, investment productivity crisis for a long time. We've identified the problem, very important first step. But how are we going to do it? Well, one of the things you can do is play to your strengths. Imagine having really good hockey players, but not really playing them. It doesn't make any sense. Right? You're going to want to play your best players. Now, I just don't see a path forward where Mark Carney's going to be able to turn things around without the energy sector, looking at everybody in this room, in Calgary. And I know you've waited a long time in my presentation for the scatter plot. But it has arrived. It's right here. I would say this scatter plot is in my top 5, for sure. Maybe I'd rank it number 3. So basically saying the most productive sectors in Canada are in the energy sector. If we have a productivity crisis, why would you want to not enable growth in your most productive sector? So if you're all thinking, well, that sounds nice, but how are we going to do it? We are doing it. But you don't hear about it very much. The Trans Mountain expansion came online last year, and our oil exports to Asia went from 0 to 600 million a month. But it's not just the Trans Mountain. The Ridley Island export facility was built, propane shipments to South Korea and Japan, about 2 billion a year since 2019. LNG Canada Phase 1 and maybe Phase 2 and other projects, shipping more of our product to Asia. So again, you live, you learn, you go through these periods of time. And I think this is what's happened. It's just like, oh, we got to do something about it. But for all of you who are listening to me, and I'm like, okay, I buy you your whole building on strengths thing. That sounds really good, Mark. But what about the other sectors? I'm here to tell you it's all the above. This is an and economy we're in right now. We're going to do both. We have to do both. So we can grow these sectors that are related to the resources, or resource sectors, hydrogen, renewable fuels, petrochemicals, critical minerals, agri-food. This is all happening. Diversification is happening in the Alberta economy. Massive growth in our aviation, defense is going to be big with a 5% NATO target. Tech, data centers, tourism's having a good year. And emissions reduction investment, carbon capture, things like that. So don't think of we got to pick a lane here. We're going to walk right in the middle of that path. And we have the people to do it. This is not as labor-constrained economy as we've had in the past. And there's no better example of this than in the tech sector. CBRE's put out this report in the last few years, and Calgary by far leads North American jurisdictions in growth in the tech sector workforce. So it is happening. Our tech sector has never been stronger. We've never produced more oil. This is an and economy. So the Alberta economy is finding its footing, 2% growth, 2.2, 2.4. This is cautious, right? Like I'm not building in a lot of these big infrastructure projects that if we get them, this poses like some upside risk. And I would say the economy is still standing after 10 years of adversity. This metric is not as flattered for Alberta. Our GDP per capita is still down from 2014 levels, but it is starting to creep back up again. It is still the highest among the Canadian provinces. So I'm in my basement. And I was so nervous, because like I said, it was 2 a.m, and I just didn't want to turn on that breaker. Because I'm like, if this doesn't work, I'm done. I'm not going to sell my house. I'm not going to pass the inspection. So I turned it on, and it was a disaster. It was like buzzing and sparks. And if you've ever been in a moment like this, you just start to panic. You thought, what have I done? I've really messed up. There's no way out of this. So I did, as anyone in my position would do, is I called my dad. Woke him up, and I said, Dad, I'm so sorry. Like, I should have hired an electrician. Like, an economist has no business doing this stuff. Like, I'm so sorry. And he said, Mark, don't worry. He lived in Calgary, so I'll come up, and I'll try my best to fix it before the inspection at 4 o'clock. So he came up. He got it all done. He found what I'd done wrong, passed the inspection, all because of my dad. And do you know what? My dad is actually here today. There you are, I see you. There you are. Yeah. So, why am I telling you this story? Definitely get an electrician. This economy is in the process of being rewired. These structural reforms, big things are happening. We've got to get the wiring right for the Canadian economy, for it to absorb shocks and not go through what I just experienced. We got to build off our fundamentals. And if 2025 was the year when Donald Trump disrupted the world trade order, and we spent most of the year lamenting what had just happened, and then the rest of the year trying to fix it and come up with a framework how to do it, 2026 is about execution. It's not about talking about it, it's about getting things done. And I think all of you in this room, and definitely this city and this province, has a major part to play in getting the Canadian economy back on track. Thank you so much. I'm in so much trouble because I went way over. But if you want to check out the 24/7, please subscribe. We'd love to have you and connect with me on LinkedIn. Thanks.
It's all good, Mark. Don't worry. Thank you, Mark, for that swifty presentation. But hey, that was a great look at what's ahead for Alberta. We're going to take a little second here, maybe zoom out a little bit. Decisions, pressures, the global shifts shaping our economy don't happen in isolation. And getting the bigger picture and understanding that is critical to navigating the economic landscape. So we're thrilled to welcome one of the country's most recognized voices in economic and political analysis, a nationally syndicated journalist. Please welcome Andrew Coyne.
Well, thank you very much. I'm a little nervous speaking to an economic outlook conference, because people are always asking me to make predictions, and I have to tell them I'm not really in the predictions business. I'm in the finger-pointing, backbiting, recriminations business. So I'll nevertheless try and lay out some of the economic, political, and international landscape that's facing us. It's somewhat bleak, but not irreparably so. First of all, we're here in the aftermath of that remarkable election in the spring, and just a very quick review of what the hell happened in that. I've never seen an election before where somebody started out 25 points ahead, by mid-campaign was 8 points behind, and closed to within 2 by the end. So there was obviously a lot of volatility in the election campaign. I think what we discovered was that 25-point lead for the Conservatives was a bit illusory. It was a certain amount of people parking their vote with Pierre Poilievre, not because they were particularly enamored of either him or the Conservatives, but they were sick of Justin Trudeau and the Liberals. They liked Justin Trudeau even less than they liked Pierre Poilievre. And when something else came along in the form of Mark Carney with his particular resume and his persona, people kind of looked at that and went, okay, maybe I can prefer that, particularly in the context of dealing with Donald Trump. And so an election campaign that the Conservatives thought was going to be about affordability and the Liberal record turned into a referendum on who was better prepared by life experience or what have you to deal with this new and rather foreboding threat. Nevertheless, at the end of the day, we got a result that kind of reflected the public's ambivalence. They weren't too keen on keeping the Liberals on, but they weren't sure they wanted to hand the keys to the Conservatives, so we got a minority parliament where both sides could kind of claim a kind of a victory. The Liberals escaped what looked like near death or certain death to remain in power, and the Conservatives, who were looking like they were going to take a pasting halfway through, actually wound up increasing both their popular vote and their seat count. And in fact, it's a doubly remarkable election because at the end of the day, both parties got over 40% of the vote, which is the first time that's happened since 1930, for those of you who are scoring. You've got a lot of excited predictions coming out of that maybe we're now in an age of two-party politics that we haven't really had since 1921. I would be skeptical of this, notwithstanding that result. Party brands in this country are enduring. Each of the parties in recent decades has been counted out at one point or another. The Conservatives after the '93 election, the NDP actually after that same election. The Liberals have been counted out I don't know how many times. 1984, they were supposed to be dead. 2011, they were certainly dead, and they were back in power with the majority in 4 years. So be skeptical of that. The other question coming out of it, the political question that we're still seeing reverberations of, is how safe is Pierre Poilievre in his job? Particularly after he lost not just the election, but his own seat. There's been a lot of speculation. We've seen recently some turmoil within the ranks, people crossing the floor or discovering they want to spend more time with their family all of a sudden. And I think it's a real question. I don't think it's resolved. I think he will probably survive the leadership review. He's very, very popular with the base, but Conservatives have got some questions to ask themselves about this. And this, oddly enough, is partly hinged on the fortunes of the NDP, which is to say, let's take two scenarios. One is the NDP is dead and we're into two-party politics. The other, as I think is more likely, is we're still in an age of three-party politics, leaving the bloc to one side. Okay, let's supposing it's two-party politics. Well, the Conservatives got 42% in this election, the best they've done since 1988, but it wasn't enough, and it isn't enough in a two-party realm. So the question Conservatives have to ask themselves is Pierre Poilievre the leader who can get them that next 5 or 6 or 7 percentage points that they would need in that scenario to form a government? Is he the kind who can appeal to crossover voters, centrist, center-right voters? If he didn't do it this time, when is he going to do it? Alternatively, if we're still in an age of three-party politics, then the Conservative game, as usual, has to hope that the Liberals and NDP split the vote. They need a strong and robust NDP, which means that New Democratic voters have to resist the siren call they get in every election. The Liberal strategy in every election since I was a child is always the same, is to tell New Democrats you can't vote New Democrat, you have to vote Liberal to keep the scary Conservatives out. Which Conservative leader is going to be the kind who can reassure New Democrats that they can stay home and vote New Democrat, or which kind of is going to scare them into the Liberal camp the way we saw them in this election? I think that's an interesting question when it comes to Pierre Poilievre. So I think there's reasons why the caucus is worried. When you see some of his polling numbers, they'll say, I'm not sure about his leadership style. What they mean is they're not sure he can win. So stay tuned. I think that question is still to be resolved. What the Conservatives certainly found was, they told themselves a story before this election that Mark Carney was, another Michael Ignatieff, and was, an egghead who was sure to stumble at politics and go down to crash and defeat. What they discovered is he's rather more of a political animal than your average central bank governor. I'm not sure I'm terribly keen on that idea. I like my central bank governors to stay out of politics, and I like my politicians to be more principled and consistent, but what we've found is he's quite prepared to jettison long-held liberal principles and policies when it's expedient to do so, which again is posing fits for the Conservatives because he's basically on issue after issue been stealing the Conservatives' clothes on immigration, on crime, on energy. We may even get a pipeline out of it. Who would necessarily have predicted that 6 months or a year ago? So he's been moving into that sort of center-right space, partly because he doesn't have to worry about the NDP at this point. He's got a lot of latitude to run to his right. The exception, of course, was that budget. I've never seen such hype before a budget in my life. It was going to be transformational and generational and all this and investments that, but at the same time it was going to involve difficult choices and sacrifices. And the budget comes out and there's none of any of that in it. It's just another pretty conventional big spending liberal budget, except they renamed much of the spending from operational to capital spending. And fine, I get the distinction in principle, but at the end of the day, you still have to borrow it, whether you call it operational or capital spending. And just because it's you call it capital spending doesn't mean it is, as we've lately been reminded by the Parliamentary Budget Officer that 94 billion out of that 300 billion plus in capital spending should really just be called operational spending. And even if it is genuinely capital spending, it's not necessarily the kind that leads to higher economic output and therefore higher revenues to the government and therefore can justify taking on that extra amount of debt. And how much extra debt? $78 billion deficit this year, $60 billion deficit as far as the eye can see, 2% of GDP on average, twice what was in Justin Trudeau's last budget. So our standard of fiscal conservatism seems to be slipping. They've abandoned their fiscal anchors yet again. If you don't like this one, they'll come up with a new one every 5 minutes or so. So it used to be they were going to have a declining debt to GDP ratio. Well, the debt to GDP ratio is going up, so now the standard and the anchor is a declining deficit to GDP ratio, and they're probably not going to hit that target either. So that's out the door. And I think the most damning thing is there's really not much of that vaunted shift from operating to capital spending that was supposedly the whole purpose of the budget. Yeah, there's some increase in capital spending, though not as much as advertised. But the cuts on the operational side are, frankly, ridiculous. They claim, and again, they never meet their targets, but they claim 3 years from now they'll be able to cut $13 billion out of operating spending, out of total operating spending in excess of $500 billion. So it's not serious, and it doesn't represent any fundamental shift. And the most particular thing that outrages me is that in a time when we're really quite desperate for higher economic growth, a subject I'll come back to in a second, there's really very little to really stimulate growth in the long term, which is when it matters in this budget. So we really need to revisit this. With any luck, this will be like the 1994 budget. For those of you with long memories, the first Chrétien-Martin budget, which really didn't address the deficit in a serious way, and then the 95 budget came in and they got serious about it. If you're an optimist, maybe they're simply preparing the ground. Okay, well, that's the budget fiscal economic review very quickly. I want to turn to some of the other things that are making me lie awake at night. And one of them is that old devil unity. I'll leave to the people in this room to decide how serious the concern of Alberta separatism should be. My own view is the vast majority of Albertans are proud Canadians. They just want to be treated with fairness and respect like anybody else. But we can certainly see that it's about to rear its ugly head in Quebec again. If the election in Quebec were held today, it's scheduled for next year, the Parti Québécois would win, probably a majority with less than a third of the vote because it's split 5 ways right now in Quebec. But the leader of the PQ has squarely promised that he would bring in another referendum within his first term in office. So we may well be revisiting this, and depending on how we play our cards as a country, we may be dealing with it on 2 fronts. And if you really want to think about how serious this can get, we also have to deal with the interventions, potentially, of the President of the United States. So until, through history, most presidents have said this is for Canadians to decide. Bill Clinton changed that to we favor a united Canada. Donald Trump, I'm really not so sure. And this brings me to my main point, I guess, of the speech is you ain't seen nothing yet when it comes to dealing with Trump. The tariff question that's obsessed us for the last 6 or 9 months is really only the tip of the iceberg. And I would cut a lot of slack to anybody who is in power in Canada right now dealing with that, because you're not dealing with a rational actor in terms of the negotiations. He doesn't have any kind of coherent vision of what he would like to see the Canada-US trading relationship. He doesn't really believe in free trade. He believes in tariffs. Give him his credit. This is the one thing he sincerely believes in. And so I'm not at all sure that there's much to be invested in getting a deal. If you could, that's great. But again, if you make concessions to get a deal with somebody and you have no assurance that they'll actually live up to the terms that they agreed to, we're only renegotiating this agreement because Trump got fed up with the agreement that he himself negotiated. So what's the percentage in seriously playing for a deal on this? I can certainly see the case for just keeping him talking, because he's going to be declining mentally and otherwise, continually in the months to come and in popular support. And one of the points I want to leave you with is, as bad as you think the situation is now with Trump, it's only going to get worse. It's only going to get worse because much of what Trump does and says is driven by his own psychological needs, to be the center of attention, to be the dominant player, and most of all, to cause outrage. And the problem for him is the flip side of the problem for us as journalists covering him, which is, he says and does 6 or 8 things every morning, any one of which would have ended the political career of any previous politician. But because he does it so relentlessly at such volume, we get numbed, we just can't keep up, and we start grading him on a curve. Has he done something worse than we expected him to do? So he gets a kind of a volume discount. But the problem for him is he thrives on outrage. So do his followers. They like to see people like me lighting their hair on fire. And so when we get blasé, when we get bored, when we get depressed and we don't respond with outrage, then they're hurt as well. So the thing he has to do is to keep upping the dose. And you can see this. His behavior has been getting materially worse month after month. It's worse now than it was at the beginning of his term. It's worse at the beginning of his term than it was during that appalling campaign. It was worse during that campaign than in the months and years previous to that. Go back to when he first burst upon the scene, he was halfway normal. But what we're seeing now, I promise you, we will look back on this time right now as being a kind of a halcyon days of tranquility and stability compared to what is to come. And so if you're making plans on the basis of things will be roughly like they are now, I urge you to adjust your plans and think about how much worse it can get, how crazy it can get. Certainly internally, I think it's an open question at this point whether the 2026 midterm elections will be free and fair. They'll hold them, because dictators always do. But I think it's an open question how free and fair it's going to be. And it's kind of a race between the logic of autocracy, where people race to get on side with the emerging dictator because they don't want to get run over by him, versus the logic of declining popularity that most incumbents experience from the day they're elected, but this one is particularly experiencing. And so there's a real potential for a breakdown in civic order in the United States. Those troops are in the streets for one reason, that's to provoke disorder. And at some point they're going to succeed, possibly over the elections. And all it takes is for somebody to take a shot at somebody and things could get really ugly in a hurry. So that can certainly have reverberations for us, but more broadly, this whole country, since our founding in 1867, admittedly in the aftermath of the US Civil War, has been based on the idea that we would have a stable, united, democratic republic to our south that we didn't have to worry about. And I cannot assure you with any certainty that it will remain stable, united, or democratic for much longer. And more than that, this was the country that has been historically our best friend, our closest ally, our nearest neighbor, our largest trading partner, and our historic protector. That we could, because of them, we could command this entire northern half of the continent, the second largest landmass of any country on earth, with only 4 million people at our founding and 41 million people today. But I promise you, we're no closer to being able to defend it ourselves. And this is a complete sea change from anything we've ever experienced. The one thing we thought we could count upon is we don't have to worry about our sovereignty on our own territory. I'm not so sure in the rest of the 21st century that we can be certain that that will be the case. Think, for example, I'm not worried about somebody invading Toronto or something, but I could well imagine some power, Russia, China, or somebody, setting up shop somewhere in the north with an oil rig or something, and just to see what we would do. And what would we do? And we certainly can't necessarily count on the Monroe Doctrine of the United States to chase them off, because if anything, I could imagine Trump saying, I'd like a piece of the action. So we are in a very, very different world. We now have the Russians across the Arctic Circle as an overt dictatorship and an emerging dictatorship to our south, and we're wedged in between. And we better find some allies fast, which means we're going to have to get serious, as we're beginning to, about our NATO partnership, about spending the appropriate amount to live up to our deal. But we're going to have to be very creative, because NATO's under a lot of stress right now. It's a very odd organization that's wedged between trying to keep the Americans in and trying to plan for a future when the Americans have pulled out. So all I'll say is that is something that is a completely new world for us. And if you really want to worry about things, even once Trump is gone, we can't count on the Americans coming back to normal. Something has broken in that society that would be willing to elect essentially a madman in the White House. So everyone agrees we got to make big changes. Right? There's a large consensus now that says we gotta diversify our trade. You heard Mark Parsons talk about this. We've got to, look out for new markets. But as he suggested, we've been trying to do that for decades, and it's been very hard to move the needle. When you've got the gravitational pull of the world's largest consumer market on our doorstep, it's pretty hard to change that. And we're going to build pipelines, to we're not captive of one market for our energy resources. Well, we'll see. We've got some movement at the federal level, but that's only the beginning of the story. You can't just wave away the requirement for indigenous consent. You can't just wave away political opposition from provincial premiers. You can't just pretend that the environmental activists are going to go away. It's still going to be a very live issue as to whether we're going to get those built. And of course, we're supposed to spend a lot more on defense. Okay, we've begun to pencil it in. We've written down the amounts. How are we going to pay for it? Are we going to cut other types of spending? Is the political situation ready for that? Are people ready for that? Are we going to pay for it by raising taxes? Politicians are always very keen on raising taxes on other people. You'll notice they're not so keen on raising taxes on you. And just raising it on the rich, I promise you, is not going to raise the tens of billions of dollars that we need to pay for our defense commitments. So we've got some real questions there. And then finally, what are we going to do about the productivity crisis? And I'll just close very quickly on this. If we're going to pay for the defense, if we're going to pay for healthcare spending and everything else, we've got to get faster economic growth. We've had a productivity crisis developing in this country for decades. In the 1960s and 70s, we grew at 5% per annum after inflation. In the 80s, it fell to 4%. In the 90s to 3.5%. In the 2000s to 3%. In the 2010s to 2.5%. We're now down to 1.5%. It's not even enough to keep pace with population growth in recent years. Getting that jump started is the number one policy challenge in front of us. And again, you look at that budget, there's just so little serious treatment of the subject. They're at least talking about it, which is new. But they still don't really have a clue, or if they do have a clue, they don't dare politically to take it. But let me just close by saying I'm going to condense hundreds of pages of productivity literature to basically two clauses. People will make the investments that you need them to do to make more productive investment, to change the way they do things in their companies in ways that will raise productivity if you do two things. One, if you let them, and secondly, if you force them. And the let them part is reducing barriers to capital formation, the things that are preventing businesses from investing, lowering marginal tax rates, reducing ridiculous regulations that are not serving any purpose. Being more open to foreign investment, because we're not going to be able to finance these very high levels of investment with our meager domestic savings. We're going to need to supplement them with foreign savings. So that's the let them part, very broadly, but with the best will in the world, people don't make those kinds of difficult decisions, laying people off, changing long-established ways of doing things, unless they have to. And the have to part is because they're afraid the competition is going to eat their lunch if they don't. And if there's one theme that runs through all the productivity literature, it's competition, competition, competition. We spend a lot of money on innovation programs. The federal government alone has got dozens of R&D subsidy programs, most of which haven't made a dime's worth of difference. What really moves the needle is if every manager at every one of the 1.4 million businesses across the country lies awake at night saying to him or herself, what am I going to do tomorrow to make my company more efficient? Because if I don't, I'm in real trouble with the competition. And they have to keep on doing that day after day after day, month after month, year after year. And if we do that on a sustained basis, and we get a half a percentage point or a percentage point more of growth every year, real terms, year after year after year, so it compounds and compounds, then that next generation or two after us will be rich enough that they can afford to pay the crippling costs of looking after us in our dotage, and particularly for health care, which is the final point I want to leave you with, if the organizer will indulge me. We are entering a society unlike any that's ever existed, where 25% of the population is going to be over the age of 65, increasing proportions over 75, 85, 95, and so on. And as a little rule of thumb, for every 10 years over 55, your per capita consumption of healthcare spending doubles. So do the math on that, and we are facing an enormous challenge. The C.D. Howe Institute calculates the net unfunded liability represented by population aging is on the order of $3.9 trillion, on top of the national debt of $1.6 trillion, on top of the liabilities in the CPP and the QPP. So we've got a mess of trouble, particularly at the provincial level. And there are credible forecasts that one or more of the provinces 20, 25 years from now could be facing a situation where they default on their debts. The good news is, if we get started now, it doesn't have to be a crisis. You know, I'll close with a quote from my favorite journalist, G.K. Chesterton. He said, "I'm not a fatalist. I don't believe in a fate that befalls us however we act." He said, "I do believe in a fate that befalls us unless we act." Our fate is in our hands. We can make choices. We can get started now, but we have to understand the gravity of the situation facing us, whether it's the economy, whether it's our security and defense situation, whether it's our politics and the degree to which we're able to muster consensus and make difficult decisions as a country. But our fate is in our hands. We just have to get started. Thank you very much for your attention. And we'll do the fireside chat.
Good job. No, there's some chairs coming up.
Okay, very good.
Wow. Pretty cool, huh? You know, that's exactly the kind of context that we came here for today. And you know what? These guys aren't getting away that easy. So what we're going to do now is we're going to start to dig in a little bit, see what's going on. Now's your chance, by the way. If you want to get a question in, get them in. We'll try to get to as many as possible. So Mark, why don't you get your ass back up here? Andrew, grab a seat. And let's have some fun, okay? All right.
Where are you going to sit?
No, you sit over there. You guys are the stars of the show. I'm just here to moderate.
I'm
here to stay the hell out of the way after that. All right. So remember, get the questions in. It's QR code. We're going to start to do this. So
thank you very much.
Both you guys. We've heard your take on what's coming up next year in the keynotes. I'll start with Andrew. What's the one surprise that you think could define either Calgary, Alberta's, or Canada's economy in 2026? What would you be surprised by?
You want me to predict a surprise?
Well, you said you don't predict, but I'm going to force you to make a prediction. I want you to predict.
Well, I think the war situation in Ukraine is tremendously important, obviously for the future of the free world, but obviously also for the economy. And when you look at how serious the situation is in Russia, how the Ukrainians have done just enormous damage to the Russian economy. They are running out of funds to finance this war. They're also running out of young men to sacrifice in it. They're now over 1.1 million casualties, maybe 500,000 dead. I think something is going to be resolved in that war one way or another in the coming year, and that will have, obvious implications for the global economy.
Mark, same question.
Surprise.
Alberta, Calgary?
Well, I actually have a lot of upside risk to my forecast, and that would be if we actually do the things that we say we're going to do. And I'm not building it into my forecast because our track record isn't particularly good. So, so far there's just comments and targets. Need to see a little bit more action, and then that'll be pleasantly surprised.
Cool. All right, we got a question from the audience. Andrew, we're in a period of uncertainty. You just talked about some of the trade tensions, policy shifts. What do you think's holding back confidence right now?
Uncertainty, and particularly connected to Donald Trump. We've never seen a president who just brings in 25% tariffs overnight based on completely fraudulent, national security crises. I love the one that, they were going to bring it in on the Swiss, the dire national security threat from the Swiss, and amazingly it was resolved when some visiting Swiss billionaires gave him a gold watch. So that kind of just Nero-level, Caligula-level craziness in the White House, how do you plan for that? It's people. This is one thing I can impress upon people is do not normalize Trump. The mind always wants to revert to normalcy, and it's very easy to say, oh, he's rough around the edges, or he posts mean tweets, but he'll get our tax rates down. That is not what we're dealing with here. We're dealing with somebody with severe mental disturbances. And you need to be thinking about it in those terms, that if you're planning on him behaving like a normal person, you are not planning well.
Well, it's funny, we actually had Canada's chief negotiator in over the summer chatting, and he was telling us that Dulles Airport had to open up more runways for all the private jets that are trying to come in to actually meet with him right now. And so it's great. And we can't get in line, but yet Myanmar and these ones are getting in front.
Yeah.
Mark, we got another question in from the audience here. So, since Andrew won't do predictions, I'm going to put it on you now. What's one thing that you think is harder to predict from the weaker signals? What do you think we should be watching more closely on a micro scale in 2026?
Well, look, I think we're kind of in my forecast is really just kind of a holding pattern from where we were this year. And the uncertainty, as Andrew talked about, isn't going away. I don't know if the situation in the U.S. is going to get better anytime soon. I agree with your prognosis on Donald Trump. What is the Kuzma negotiation next year? I don't have high hopes. I think sector-specific tariffs are going to be with us. So my thought is that if we can somehow find a path forward to execute on something big, actually if you look at the federal budget and you just kind of as an economist add it all up, it doesn't get anywhere close to the promises of $1 trillion of private investment. I just can't make the math work on that. I think what the budget is really banking on is a shift in investor sentiment that says, we're open for business, we're going to take Canada seriously again as a place to invest.
But I think...
that's actually, I think, they're trying to create this virtuous cycle.
Yeah, and the direction is more good than bad. To me, it's just too incremental.
Yeah.
So, for example, the budget crows about we now have a 3 percentage point advantage on the marginal effective tax rate. In normal times, great, but if you're trying to persuade people you should invest in Canada, even in the face of a 25% tariff that might get slapped on you any day, then I think we need to do much more radical things. I think we needed to do much more radical things even before Trump came along to jumpstart investment and to really signal that we really are in the business of attracting investment to this country. And I mean radical tax reform.
And I would argue any advantage we might have in the marginal effective tax rate is compensation for a tougher regulatory environment.
Yeah, it's fair enough.
And the other thing is, look, I mean, you can add up, in aggregate, I don't know if that's true. I saw Jack Mintz comment on this today, but the sector-specific preferences doesn't mean it's true across the board.
That's right.
So we have lots of distortions in our tax system, and we also have growth disincentives built into our tax system as well.
Well, there's a whole other story with de-risking the innovation. Okay, so what's the radical thing, Andrew? What's one of the radical things that we should absolutely throw out against that wall to drive that investment? Obviously, that's what we do. We're out there trying to bring investment back into our region, our community, and our province. So what do you think?
Replace the corporate tax system. Move to a cash flow system. If you really want to get radical, move to a tax only on rents on supernormal profits. What you want to do is the whole business of taxing income is really difficult and fraught and creates all kinds of work for tax accountants. No offense to the tax accountants in the room, but it's just a really difficult thing to try to tax. Tax economists have been talking for decades about this kind of tax reform. It's difficult to implement. It's difficult to get the political consensus behind it. But never waste a good crisis. We're in a crisis.
Yeah,
and this is the time to be thinking about those kinds of things.
And the budget doesn't do anything about this comprehensive tax review that we've been talking about.
Yeah, exactly. Both parties have mentioned it, but neither of them have been very clear at all about what they're thinking about.
Yeah, interesting. So, do you think the burden on we talked about innovation, the government's involved in innovation. We talked about how we create the environment for innovation to happen. How do we unlock some of that corporate innovation dollar? How do we drive like the Europeans or the Asians have been able to do? What do you think we need to do in Canada to help unlock that?
I think we got a scaling problem. I think we have, we talk about our startups and that's great, but we need them to scale because that's where you get the productivity gains. And so that's where you got to remove some of these, whether in the tax code and other areas, disincentives for companies to grow and commercialize their R&D here in Canada. Was I surprised? I thought they'd put in a patent box or something like that in the budget, just we could debate that, whether that's a good idea, but like that would, reduce the tax on the returns to investment. But we penalize success, I think. Like, I think that's the way we do it. We provide upfront supports, and then when companies are successful, we
punish risk takers. We know that.
We should stop treating innovation, thinking about it as a scientific process, and start thinking about it as an economic process. So what we do is we pump in billions of dollars in subsidies for R&D. It's kind of this hydraulic model of the economy where you inject it at one end and out comes higher productivity at the other. And there's just not a lot of evidence that that actually is the case. You need incentives to make better use of R&D. And the incentive, I hate to be a one-note Johnny, the incentive is competition. We've got vast sectors of our economy, key sectors that connect everything else. Telecoms, financial services, airline travel, agriculture, God knows. We've got, huge sectors of our economy that are not just cartels or oligopolies like those industries, but even state monopolies. We still have a state monopoly post office, for instance. So we've got to get serious about competition. I think stricter competition policy is part of that, being more open to foreign investment, because a lot of times the competitive stimulus is going to come from entrants from abroad rather than from domestically homegrown sources. But we've got to make competition the absolute watchword of all of our economic policy.
And again, not much in the budget on that.
Yeah.
Got a question for Mark. Do you want to take that one? You can see from another one from our Team Calgary partner.
Economic lever to encourage
investment?
What's
the one lever you think?
Well, I mean, look, I think the major projects office is a start to get things across the finish line faster. Happy it's based in Calgary and all those things. But I think we need to get to the point where we don't need one. That is just we make the regulatory system so streamlined that it's predictable. And I think that's the issue. Is like so often companies feel like they're following all the rules, they're checking all the boxes. And at the end, something happens where a minister has a final veto on a major project. And I just think we got to get away from that. Because it's just, why would you put billions of dollars of CapEx in Canada if you don't know what the final outcome is, even if you follow all the rules?
Andrew, thoughts?
Get rid of the small business tax rate.
You're a lot on tax.
Or at least bring the corporate rate down, the general rate. This comes to Mark's point, though, which is that everybody loves a small business. I love a small business. But we're encouraging them to stay small.
Yeah.
And if we're going to get the scale, we need to have more of those businesses jumping to the larger stage, and everything we do is encouraging them to stay small.
Well, I mean, an example of that would be, I think it's a 35% refundable tax credit for R&D. If you're small, and once you get at a certain size, you default to a non-refundable 15% credit. So you can't grow out of.
So Andrew, let me push this on. You're talking about that staying small. I mean, is that a fundamental output of trying to spread the peanut butter too thin? Are we trying to give everybody a participation medal, not actually pick the winners, let the market decide the winners, and then get behind the winners?
Yeah, and it's very much driven by politics. You've seen governments, particularly the last government, the Trudeau government, attempt to chip away at some of these preferences in the tax code, particularly the small business rate, and they got their ass handed to them, forgive my language. I think the lesson of that in similar exercises is go big or go home. Broader, more radical tax reform is not only the better policy in economic terms, it's more politically saleable because you create winners as well as losers. Whereas if you just go at one preference at a time, all you've got are people who are going to lose from the process, and they're very organized and very vocal, and you're just going to get burned. So again, I come back to radical tax reform. The time has arrived.
And you never think of tax. You always think of incentives as being good if you can get them, but they have to be financed. So that means taxes that are higher on other people that aren't so lucky to get them.
Okay. I mean, we give money to people who know how to write grants, right? So
yeah.
That's a whole other story.
We're still, every now and then somebody announces that industrial policy is back, and I always say, when did it go away? We're handing out year after year, just at the federal level, I think the last calculation was $50 billion a year in business subsidies. And all that's doing is teaching people to invest not on the basis of the real economic returns and benefits of different investments, but the ones to which the subsidies and tax preferences are attached. And it's productivity inhibiting, like you wouldn't believe. So we need, as well as tax reform, we need subsidy reform. We need to de-subsidize the economy so we can find out what things really cost, because people make good decisions when they know what things cost, and they make bad decisions when the costs are hidden from them, and that's the whole point of the subsidies.
Would you make an exception partly for national security?
Yeah,
and you know, maybe even in climate?
There are certain things, well, to me, the climate policy, the necessary and sufficient climate policy is the late lamented carbon tax. I would get rid of all the other ones. No, I've lost my train of thought. What was the question?
No. I mean, I'm not the moderator, but like,
you can.
National security.
National security,
yeah,
right?
There are non-economic arguments why you would want to have domestic capacity in certain sectors for military reasons, and I get that, and that's become much more salient now than it would have been 10 or 20 years ago. So fair enough, but that doesn't mean we have to do everything at home. Maybe we don't want to buy as much from the States anymore because we're worried about how reliable a partner they are, but we can certainly source our military hardware from the Swedes or the Danes or what have you, and we should certainly be looking at that. We've got to stop using defense policy as an industrial or regional development policy. We should be using it to buy the best hardware at the best price that we possibly can for our fighting men and women.
Okay, we talked about this a little bit yesterday when we chatted. Can we ever walk away from some of the so-called sacred cows of our economy? Specifically, we're talking about, automotive manufacturing. We had a great conversation with it, and I think it's really important for this audience to hear that perspective.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think we are facing a bit of an existential question with the auto industry. And I've never been a proponent of the massive amounts of subsidies we've thrown at the auto industry over the years. We do it to, quote unquote, keep them in the game. Well, it's a game that everybody's losing. All you're doing by pouring those subsidies in is winning the right to go on subsidizing. And now that the President of the United States has declared his intention to cripple and kill our auto industry, maybe it's a time to think about a post-auto industry future. As difficult as that is to say, maybe that's not so hard to say in Alberta as it would be in Ontario. But Australia waved goodbye to its auto industry, and it's never looked back. And we cannot have any sacred cows in any industry. Again, we just can't afford that anymore.
One promising sign is when Tim Hodgson, the energy minister, was here in Calgary, gave a speech. He was talking about comparative advantage, and I almost like, what? The federal government's talking about comparative advantage, meaning, like, where can we succeed where other jurisdictions can't?
But just going back to your point, Andrew, though, isn't the counterbalance of that? It says, okay, great. Let's say we put our hands up and say we can't win in that sector. Like, is there not a fear that everything that's sucking sound is just everything just leaving, and we just become an import economy?
No, I mean ultimately the currency, if nothing else, assures that. You may not be competitive at 71 cents, but you'll be competitive at some other level. But we can do things to make ourselves an attractive place to invest. I may have mentioned tax reform once or twice. But there's other things we can do to make it more attractive for high-flying individuals to want to come and live here. So getting serious about reducing the top marginal trade tax on individuals as well. There's all kinds of policy levers you can use to make yourself generally more attractive to investment without saying we want to attract this particular industry. Because nobody knows, I promise you, nobody knows what the industries of the future are. Nobody, if you'd asked people 30 years ago, is the iPhone, they would say, what's an iPhone? The only thing you can say the only prediction I'll make with some certainty is most of the jobs and the GDP growth in the decades to come will come from industries that not only don't exist yet, but that nobody's even thought of. So we've got to get out of this game of pretending we can identify the technologies of the future or the industry of the future or the companies of the future. That is political nonsense.
You might be more. I think you're right on the tax stuff, but I think I'm probably more regulatory. But I mean, it's a combination of both.
What about productivity? I mean, that's obviously you can't have a conversation today without talking about it. What is the barrier? I mean, we talk about new technologies coming in and taking jobs, which could boost productivity, but that means we don't have the same amount of income to spend. What's our thoughts on that? Like, how do we think about the productivity? And then I want to go back to the GDP question. Is that still the right measure? Should we be paying that much time and effort in measuring GDP, or are there other measures we should be thinking about? So let's talk productivity first.
Well, I mean, look, I talk about productivity a lot. I was talking to audiences, and then I realized people are looking at me like, why is this guy talking about it so much? Like, this is kind of boring. And then I've discovered that most people think of productivity as job losses or doing more with less, and both of those things seem unappealing. But the reality is, you can't just grow your economy by adding more people, which effectively has kind of been happening in Canada. That's been driving a lot of the growth. And again, I'm sounding like an economist, but I can't help it. But like, to boost living standards,
sure you can,
and wages, basically people have to produce more per every hour they work, or you're not going to get paid more. That's just the way the math works.
Yeah.
And so it's all these things that Andrew's talking about: competition, finding ways, building big things. I think the scaling small businesses into larger businesses, commercializing here in Canada, and not having our IP go to the US. I think that's all part of it.
We've counted on two things in the recent past, to grow: population growth and commodity prices. And neither of those are necessarily going to be carrying us forward. So the only thing that's left is getting more output out of each worker, which is not a function of making them work harder with the lash, it's giving them more capital to work with. The reason why American workers, not just American workers, but many countries now across the OECD, the reason why they're more productive, let me just pause on that point. If you ask Canadians until fairly recently, where do we stand in the international league tables of standard of living or productivity, they'd probably say, oh, 5th or 6th, because that's where we were about 50 years ago. We're now down to about 20th or 22nd. And I think that gets people's attention if you're trying to get people to focus on this, is we're falling behind, not just the United States, but everybody. And the reason why these countries are exceeding us is because their workers have more capital to work with than our workers, thousands of dollars more per worker. Our investment rates are now so low that we're not even replacing capital as it wears out. So capital stock per worker has been declining in Canada for the first time in maybe ever. So higher rates of investment are part of it, and then coming back to this point of making sure that that investment is used in more and more productive ways, i.e. competitive stimulus to make the best use of every possible dollar, to wring every ounce of productivity out of each extra investment dollar.
I actually think it's an investment problem, and the way I can explain this is, if you think the Canadian economy, we all want it to grow, but you nod our head. We've been growing our economy with consumer spending and government spending, for the most part, and some housing. That can't continue. I can't see a way for us. Like, are we just going to pile on more debt indefinitely to keep things going? So that's what it comes down to. And the federal budget at least acknowledges that for the first time that I've seen.
Okay, I know we're getting short on time. I'm going to attack. This is totally left field, Andrew. We hear a lot about when we go talk to people around the country, around the world, and we tell them what's happening in Alberta, what's happening in Calgary, and they always look at us and go, holy shit, I had no idea.
Yeah.
I mean, you're back east, you see it. What is it? I mean, we hear from our people around that say, well, all we hear are the negative stuff. Like, what is impeding us or our country to understand what's actually happening on the ground here? Like, how do we help? I mean, this is your bailiwick. What do you think? Like, what's your advice to us as a community to help get the message out of all the amazing things that are happening here?
That's an interesting question. I mean, I think the stereotype, which people on both sides of the border can play to, is that it's just about oil and gas. No economy in the world is only about oil and gas, and there's all kinds of different sectors in Alberta that people need to hear more from and hear more about. I think it's just understanding that it's a complex society and a complex economy, the same as any other is. It's just we hear more about the oil and gas sector for various reasons. It's been very controversial in recent years, and that can play into that stereotype. So, but as that potentially subsides, I'm going to be very interested to see what this memorandum of understanding means, and if we will in fact have peace in the valley. But that may allow, once the temperature comes down a little bit on that file, then maybe people will learn and understand there's more to Alberta than just oil and gas.
Well, it's funny, sorry, we've actually heard our premier say that, there's 143,000 people who work in the energy sector. but there's 193,000 that work in technology now.
That's
so
right.
I think that we get through. Mark,
I just on that comment that like we need to brag more and have more pride in what we're doing and get out and tell our story.
couldn't agree more. We had one question. Mark, talking about, obviously we talked about the tech talent growth in our city, fastest growing tech talent market in North America. What does that mean from an economic lens from your standpoint, from an economist standpoint?
Well, it's fantastic because it's a high productivity sector, it's high wages, it builds on some of their existing strengths. We have all these, in the energy economy, you had all these engineers and scientists, and we have this huge pool of labor now we're deploying to grow our tech sector. It's fantastic. And we're able to draw people in record numbers because people want to work here and work in a new industry. And it's not new anymore. I think it's like a full ecosystem that's kind of building, growing on itself, right? And it's absolutely fantastic. It's one of the most surprising things that I have seen in the Alberta economy. If someone told me you'd be the leader in the tech sector in North America, I'd say, you're crazy. Like, how's that going to happen?
Well, I got those questions when I moved back. I heard them all the time.
But again, like,
you know what I'm talking about, Dan?
Talk about it. Yeah.
Sorry.
It just shows you how unpredictable these things are.
Yeah, completely. All right, last question, each of you separately. When we come back here a year from now, what's the headline you hope that we're talking about? I want to start with you, Mark, and then I want to hear from Andrew from the other perspective. So what do you think? What will we be talking about in 2020 at the Economic Outlook for 2027? Hopefully sponsored by ATB again.
Oh my gosh. Well, I'll just say it anyway, because we're talking about starting a West Coast pipeline.
All right.
What was that?
A West Coast pipeline.
Yes.
We got our pipeline.
Yeah.
Andrew, close us off.
That we have a long-awaited plan from the federal government to seriously get serious about a growth strategy. Everything comes down to growth. We're not going to pay for all the things we want to pay for at current rates of economic growth. And in fact, as I say, at current rates of economic growth, we're heading for a calamity.
Awesome. Well, you know what? We could keep this going for a long time. I know I'm really interested in this, but unfortunately, we promised we'd get this done on time today. But how about a big round of applause and thank you to Andrew and Mark.
Thank you.
Awesome job. Thank you. Well, that's a wrap on the 2026 Economic Outlook powered by ATB Financial. I want to say a big thank you to our good friend, Dr. Linda Manyguns. I want to thank Navin Arora for being here today, Chris, obviously, for opening us off. Also, a big thank you to Mayor Farkas for making time today. We know how much stuff he has on his plate, but we appreciate you being here. I want to again thank all of our Team Calgary partners. Your confidence, your support in the work that we do absolutely is incredibly appreciated and valued. I want to also thank, how about the team at the BMO Center for hosting us? Can we hear a big round of applause for them? I mean, this amazing facility that hosted us today. Again, thanks to the team at Calgary Economic Development and the Opportunity Calgary Investment Fund for putting on another crazy, fantastic event. And most importantly, thank you. Thank you to all of you for being here today. It's always awesome when we, as a community, come together and talk, engage, and share. Let me close off with this one thing. Yeah, we're going to face uncertainty. We're going to face tensions. Going into next year, it's going to be unpredictable. But we, as a community, aren't going to wait for the future. We're going to build it. We're going to build it with confidence, with momentum, and the belief that under these blue skies, it really is possible. Thank you very much. Have a great rest of your day, and we'll see you next year.